Yes, you read the title right. I'm 57 years old and I'm still mucking around playing games. I've been a gamer all my life. Tabletop wargaming, Tunnels and Trolls, Dungeons and Dragons. Got into PC gaming and went through Fallout 3 a couple, well, probably about 3 times. And when Fallout 4 was coming out, I realised that my little laptop just couldn't handle the specs, so I bought myself a PS4. That was what, 9 years ago? Fallout 4 came out? I'm sure it was. So, as many Fallout fans, when the Amazon Prime series started, I watched that at least twice and decided to blow the dust off my old Fallout 4 disc and give it a replay. There are so many videos and tutorials and things available now that it was so much more fun, and I'd never really explored the build mode, not more than just mucking around with small settlements, but this time round, with the videos that are available to give you advice and tips and tricks, I've discovered an absolute gem, something that's keeping me obsessed, and the more I play, the more I want to do. So, for a challenge here on Spectacle Island, where I do a few experimental things and test some ideas, I decided to give myself the challenge of rebuilding my childhood home. Yeah, if you've not tried it, give it a go, because it is a hell of a challenge and a very enjoyable one. So, let me bore you to death with a guided tour. So I lived on a suburban street. I mean, there would have been a road here and the pavement here, and the houses were kind of terraced groups of four. And we were at the end of one of those groups of four, so there was a little alleyway at the side to the next door neighbour's house, and then there'd be another group of four that way, and the other houses would continue in that direction. And I would come along the pavement on my bicycle and ride up the back alley. I have to say, levels are off. It's all over the place, but I was doing the best I could, and I'm pretty happy with the results so far. So anyway, here we are at the front gate. The little side alleyway between the houses would take you down to where we kept the dustbins, and then there would be a back gate into my next door neighbour's garden, and that was the rear door to our house. And you could go through the front gate, but we always came up here and just walked round this way. Yeah, typical front garden. Little privet hedges and a fence. A couple of planters. Some feature in the middle. We had bay windows, something I can't reproduce in this. So they would have stuck out more. And there was a kind of staggered brickwork on the corners, which as a youth I could climb up, get onto top of the bay window, and actually climb into the bedroom window if my parents had locked themselves out, as long as the window was open. In the neighbourhood, I was often called upon to do the same in neighbours' houses. Little cat burglar. So here we are at the front door. Obviously the empty milk bottles left out for the milkman. And into the hallway. The furniture here, the bureau, and another one in the front room were kind of a dark wood, and the handles were made out of like folded leather. The first drawer was actually a long drawer, and you could fold the front down and it became a writing desk. This was full of telephone directories and various other things, and obviously there was the phone. And a little chair to sit on while you're making your phone calls. Beneath what was a grandmother clock. You know what a grandfather clock is? Well, grandmother clock is like half the size and hangs on a wall. Something I couldn't again reproduce, but that's there to represent the grandmother clock. The particular challenge here was I needed a specific feature with the staircase, because it goes up to a landing and then goes up another couple of steps to the upper floor. So I ended up using warehouse parts, which means all the doors are way too long and too short, and the ceilings are too high down here. I couldn't figure it out, but let's not worry too much about the build. The staircase would have been enclosed, and there was a small door into what we called the larder. And the fridge, because the kitchen is so small, the fridge was obviously a lot smaller than this, and it was under the stairs. And you went into this cupboard, which, yeah, Mum used to stack the canned foods, and there was a small window there. We had lots of breakfast cereals and cakes and things. And there was a rail that ran across that hung all the coats on, plus also coats hanging off the back of this door. So imagine a small enclosed space, and the electric meter was in there, various odds and sods. It was a very neat little cupboard. There was always a hallway table, probably with a bowl of fruit. And I could have dropped some keys on that, because that's always where we left keys. It was very cramped in this hallway, and the way the doors open was a bit of a hazard at times. If somebody was in the understairs cupboard and you were coming out of the bathroom, the doors would clash into each other. Linen basket in the sink with the mirror with lights that certainly would not comply with the modern lighting arrangements in bathrooms these days. The bathroom, well, the bath went from wall to wall. It isn't as big as this in reality. And the shower was just something that came off the taps, was at this end. And there was a small window through, covered by a net curtain, to see into the conservatory. There was a fan on the wall. Yes, there was a radiator, and there was also a towel rail there, so your towels could warm up. And there was a white cupboard on the wall with angled edges, so you didn't crack your head on the corner as you walked to the door. And the cupboard was full of all the medicines and toiletries and first aid kits and bad shaving foam and brush, etc. There was actually a little glass shelf that went in front of the mirror, if I remember. For some reason, the toothbrushes and the glass I placed there have disappeared. I don't know where they went. Fallout 4 glitches. We'll explore the rest of the downstairs in a moment. Let me take you up the staircase, which would have had spindles going all the way up and a long handrail. So coming up the staircase, which I remember as a child sliding down on my knees and bashing my head against that bureau on more than one occasion. You might be wondering why there's a spade there. If I could have mounted it on the wall, I would have, but that's there to represent an antique brass bed warming pan hung on the wall here. And at this level, there was a small window you could look out and get a bit of an angle on the street. Actually, the neighbour's house was set back a bit further. It's amazing how much you remember when you do something like this. Additional memory note, just slipping this in here while I'm coming up the stairs. I was once caught on this step playing with matches and rubber bands and decided it would be a great place to start a little campfire for my action men. Honestly, my mother absolutely slapped the ass off me for doing that. Jeez, I mean, you know, it was carpet and I started a fire on the step. Another example of how just doing this build has brought back memories. But then there were a couple more steps to get you to the top landing and the bedrooms. Now, when I was a small child, I had one room and my elder brother had the other room. My parents had the third room. But when he moved out when I was about 11 or 12, I managed to take over his room as my lounge. So this was just a bedroom. Now, as I said, proportions are totally out because this room was so small, the bed was literally 2 feet away from that wall, and it touched that wall. There were a few shelves above. Yeah, I did have a side table. And here there had been, well, I'd had an old desk that had 3 drawers either side and the desktop. And we took it apart and stacked the drawers up, so there were 6 drawers going up, and then the desktop rested on a batten on the wall, and underneath the desktop there was a rail to hang lots of clothes, and then I had all my sort of t-shirts and other things piled on top, and various other things in the drawers. But yeah, this was just my bedroom for the most part. But then I had my own lounge. And I remember at the age of 17, redecorating this whole place. We ripped out fitted wardrobes, repainted the thing, and I got some nice new furniture for my birthday. Some shelf units, which for the most part was stacked with my record collection and books on art and various other paperbacks. Why have I got a carrot there? Yeah, I had a couple of smart chairs and a nice desk that had some drawers on one side. And then these represent bean bags, because I would just chill on the floor listening to music. I had a hi-fi system in the shelf, or between the shelves, with speakers on the shelf units. A black and white TV. There was some kind of chest or cabinet in here, and I've not overly bothered trying to decorate these shelves. But it represents a place where I used to chill out, listen to music, do some painting. I actually went to art college and have a degree in art. And I would often put a board across the chairs and prop a canvas on it, paint away. I did have an easel somewhere. I had a big, tall, angle poised lamp. And yes, I did have a guitar, slightly more guitar shaped than the Fallout ones. Never really learned to play much. And I did have a typewriter, where I started my novel, which took me about 20 years to actually eventually finish. And yes, if you search The Unwritten Timetable by Stone Jensen, it's available to buy. I don't know, might even put a link down in the description for that. So yeah, this was my chill out room. I did have a couple of dumbbells. But yeah, mostly just for listening to music and painting. And then the master room was my parents' room. Didn't go back quite that far, but yeah, there was another set of drawers. And then there was a kind of a built-in cupboard in this space, which my dad used to open the door to, sit down, and he'd put a table in, and he used it as like his little office. And there was a small window here. Now my parents' double bed certainly didn't have any kind of shelves at the back, but this is the only double bed I could find in Fallout. I have to say, I built the structure for the most part before I experimented and used the USO mod. Unlock settlement objects, and oh my god, the amount of things I can do now, which I if I'd known about before I started this build, it would have been probably a lot different. But yeah, this was Dad's side. A pocket watch is very important there, and I left a wedding ring on each table, just as a reminder of my parents. Clothes and linen was stored in that chest of drawers, and here there was a big double wardrobe, upon which the family suitcases were stacked on those rare occasions we actually went on holiday. Mum's dressing table. There'd be jewellery boxes and various other knickknacks on here. And a big framed mirror that was part of the dressing table. In this corner, the teddy bear was my teddy bear. That as a child, I had once asked my father if he had a teddy bear, and he told me that he'd never had one. So I gave my teddy bear to my dad, who kept it in pride of place for many, many years. I've still got that teddy. My dad died when I was 28 years old. And my mother, well, she passed 5 years ago at the grand old age of 95. Yeah, would have been 100 this year. So this was Mum and Dad's room. My den and my bedroom. So now we can go back downstairs. God, there are a lot of gaps. Still getting the hang of the build mode, guys. I'm still getting the hang of this build mode. It's not as easy, it seems, especially when you're trying to do something which is based on a real house. I have to say, the biggest bugbear I have with Fallout building elements is that door frames. The doors are always in the middle. There's, I think, one door frame that is where the door is at the side, but that's a powered sliding door. So I've had to improvise, find doors that couldn't or didn't need to snap into a door frame, and hang them where I possibly could and just try and fill in gaps. So you've seen under the stairs and in the bathroom. Well, this was the lounge. Didn't have as much in the way of lighting, but interior lighting in Fallout is pretty poor. There was just one main central light and a couple of lamps. TV. This was a fake gas fire, and try as I might, I don't know, I'm still getting used to the pillar glitching thing that I couldn't get a hearth to sit in where I wanted it to. But yeah. Mum would sit here, various magazines, and always a copy of the Radio Times, often doing some knitting and sewing. And my dad would sit this side, always doing a crossword or reading the paper. This sideboard had two large cupboards, inside of which were drinking glasses, decanters, the soda, what do you call it? Siphon, yeah, soda siphon, and a few small bottles of spirits. And then there were drawers this side that contained more of Mum's knitting and sewing stuff, packs of cards, dominoes, some board games. And this was a nest of tables, which would pull something out and maybe play cards. Oh, I forgot that table. Yes, there was another table in here. One that my dad had made. Had a wooden top, and you could flip it over, and it had green baize, so it became a card table. As I knelt on the floor, playing cards with my dad for matchsticks. The shelves behind had metal runners that went up the walls, and then wooden shelves that went across. So they began above the level of each chair on the sides and then came down more in the middle, and there would have been more, you know, decorative plates, vases, etc. But it was a library full of Folio Society, Reader's Digest, Time Life books, National Geographic magazines, things on every subject you can imagine, which was a great learning resource for me. Because back in those days, boys, we didn't have no internet and nothing. You just had to learn stuff from books. So Dad's library was a great resource for me. The majority of the paintings in this room and other places around the house were actually watercolours that had been painted by my mother's first husband, who died her second marriage ended in divorce, and then I'm the product of her third marriage. Next we would come to the dining room. Again, looks a hell of a lot bigger than it actually was, but you'd almost bash your knees on an old sofa that was here. And then there was just enough space for a chair in front of what this represents, the old Vulcan Viceroy boiler. And the actual wall came out above, in line with the boiler. So that was a flat wall, which also boxed in this area. And in this cupboard was the hot water tank, and above it was the airing cupboard. And you would jump on the stool to open the airing cupboard door and pull out the bed sheets. This was an old mahogany blanket box, which I think did have blankets in it, and oh my god, it smelled of mothballs whenever you opened it. Really, really stinky smell. Little black and white TV on it, and yes, there were plates and cups and saucers, Mum's finest kind of chinaware on display, and obviously stuff that we used to use on a regular basis. Again, another issue with the doors here. There would have been a glass panelled sliding door that went behind a very slim bit of wall. The kitchen was really skinny. The waste bin would have been about there, and then there was a stool, which is over there. But for demonstration purposes, you can't actually get in to see. Yeah, there was a sink at the end. There was a little window through into the conservatory, and a window to the garden. There would have been a window ledge running around here with some small pot plants. I couldn't glitch that, but I was trying to get the taps into that sink unit, but I couldn't glitch it in. But hey, it represents what was there. A couple of small shelves. There would have been a worktop with cupboards going up to the cooker. This was a freestanding cooker, as this, but it had an overhead grill, and the general use plates were stacked on top of the overhead grill. So when Mum was cooking, she turned the grill on, warmed the plates up, so we'd get served nice warm plates of hot food. And here there would have been a washing machine with a worktop above it, and a small cabinet above that that contained condiments, salt, pepper, gravy granules or gravy powder, mustard powder, cloves, and various cups and beakers. We had a folding table that had two semi-oval leaves, which for the most part was left with one eave folded down and it pushed up against the wall, so you'd have the flat surface and one of the semicircular eaves sticking out. And we only ever opened it out fully when there was a big family gathering. And chairs would be left against a radiator on this wall, where above it there'd just be a wall-mounted bookcase, another thing you can't get in Fallout. I do remember my mother actually went through some stuff in my room and picked out a painting that I'd had in a portfolio and had it framed. And I was quite surprised when I came back from college one time and found that she'd framed this horrendous painting I'd done when I was at sixth form. Despite the wonderful array of things that you can get in the USO, and the OC Decorator mod. I am missing a hell of a lot of ornaments. I mean, the shelf over the fireplace. Imagine, if you will, a blue ceramic fish. One of those kind of like fat Chinese type fish. Tail flipping up. Big wide mouth being pulled open by a winged cherub riding the fish's back. Yep, we had one of those. There was also a small ceramic calf. And as I was reminded the other day at a client's house, a wooden elephant, carved wooden elephant with small ivory tusks. I saw one at this client's house and suddenly went, what? I remember that. We had one of those. There's something this build has done is really bring back a lot of memories. I mean, the glass decanter in the corner here, that was a large cut glass decanter, and instead of a stopper, it had a rubber bung with a light fitting and lampshade, so the lamp actually was made using a glass decanter. So we had a conservatory, and both the conservatory and the kitchen were extended twice at some point, so there was actually a stepped level roof. But this area was used, well, as a potting shed, general area for tools and odds and sods, somewhere for me to keep my bike. A singular item that is missing from the Fallout menus and the whole Fallout genre, I think. Bicycles. Never see any anywhere. But yeah, it was my dad's indoor potting shed. He used to propagate geraniums like crazy, and I couldn't stand the smell of them. That's also where the ironing board was, and on this cabinet here there was a long cylindrical roller iron. Don't know if you've ever seen one of those, but you could fold a bed sheet in half and half again and then feed it through the roller iron. You would stand on a foot pedal, and the heated plate at the back would clamp down on the rolling cylinder, which was like a padded cylinder, and you fed the bed sheet in the top and then pulled it out the bottom, and it came out all ironed and warm. I actually used to love helping my mum do the sheets. I did actually clean some Action Men uniforms once and put them through the roller iron, but yeah, Mum wasn't too happy after I'd melted all the buttons onto the metal plate and left streaks of plastic. The electrical cables here represent a retractable clothesline. There was a box there and you pulled on a bar and out came the 4 nylon kind of lines, and you hooked it on the wall over that side. And so this was like an indoor drying area where clothes could be hung if it was raining. Due to the nature of things being extended and changed, there was this kind of odd area where, I don't know, it was just kept for odds and sods and tools, stuff for the car. And here there was what was an old coal cupboard or coal cellar. And somewhere in there was a very small box-sized freezer, amongst other crap. But yeah, as the kitchen was so small, like I say, the fridge was under the stairs and the freezer was in the coal house. And that was just the back entry, as you've seen before, to get to the bins and the back alley. I'm just going to have to go for a sleep and get some daylight because I can't be walking around the garden at night. Back in a mo. Anyway, let's have a look in the garden. Now this bit I'm quite proud of. With the USO mod, Unlocked Settlement Objects, I actually managed to do some retexturing. And now, if I'd have had this mod before I'd built the house, things could have been great. Oh, the floors would have been nice. But hey, I only just discovered this and what you can do with it. But I'm so glad, at least at this stage, I had installed it, because it made me, well, it helped me do the garden so much better. I have a couple of other mods of filled shelves, as you see, because I needed those bookcases to have books in, and some other filled containers and benches. I think that's the workshop decorations mod, but it really adds to it. So yeah, we as small children would open the door to my dad's shed, climb up the side of the door and get onto the old outhouse roof and go across, and then you could get onto the conservatory roof and get across to the roofs that were above the kitchen. So out here we had a nice little slabbed yard. Again, it was used for planting and potting. I think we may have had a barbecue, but it wasn't a very big thing when I was growing up in the 70s. The green box represents one of those like mini greenhouses where Dad would have grown tomatoes. And at the back here there was a very narrow little planter bed. But yeah, we had a couple of areas and then a step up to the lawn. And I've not been able to fill that hole as well as I wanted to. There wasn't so much of a wall there, but I couldn't get a two-layered block section. So yeah, backyard. Not a lot of space to kick a ball around. I used to stand here and throw tennis balls at the brick wall between the windows upstairs. Kind of like squash. Yeah, there was a bench. We did have some kind of metal framed canvas folding recliner. That was a favourite for Mom in summertime. And some standard deck chairs. A couple of nicer ones. This was the original outside toilet. And it was one of those old things with the cistern hanging on the wall and a big chain to pull. There wasn't really much else in here. There was just a very tiny little window there. Oh, that's the only bike you can find in this game, is a little kiddie's tricycle. And then my dad's shed. I mean, okay, it was nowhere near that big and the roof didn't extend. But it was green, wooden, and had the lawnmower and all the gardening tools and every... Dad's shed. It housed the lawnmower and all the other gardening tools. And an absolute plethora of tools. There were lots of pieces of wood stacked between the rafters, odds and sods. And my dad was, I don't know, I wouldn't say a hoarder, but he loved repurposing things. And what really made me laugh in Fallout is the coffee tins really remind me of the baby formula milk powder tins that my dad had kept since I was a baby. And he used them to store nails, screws, nuts and bolts. And there were also lots of empty pill bottles and jars that had all manner of nails and screws and washers and springs, and it's just hundreds of them, along with all these tools. I used to love coming in here, and occasionally we'd actually build things together. Like, I remember we made a couple of like sawhorse stands, which were multi-purpose because they were designed in such a way that you could lay one on a step and it would create a platform that you could put your ladder on through painting on the staircase. He was very good at the DIY, my dad. Alright, we seem to have a temporary twitch glitch on the leaves. Let me pause for a moment. Okay, bushes and trees. They sometimes just start flapping around all over the place. It's a bit of a glitch. As I say, with the Unlock Settlement Objects mod, I'm so happy that I managed to recreate a garden that looked so strangely like the garden that was here. It put shivers down my spine, virtually walking around my own old home. Honestly, the memories that have come flooding back since doing this build is crazy. Side of the shed there was a water butt. There would have been a drain pipe filling that up. And various old junk around the back there. Couple of beds. Somewhere against the fence there was some very tall, spindly things that had yellow leaves. I can't remember what it's called. Not bamboo, but definitely something that grew tall. I can't remember. There was a steel post. It was actually an old scaffolding pole. And the washing line went from that scaffolding pole to a concrete post that was somewhere over here. And this area of lawn was actually, there was like a slope here, and this kind of section was on a slightly higher level. Couldn't really figure that one out. That was a sumac tree. Beautiful thing with kind of furry cones, if I remember rightly. And a slightly less chunky rockery in this area. At the end of the pathway was an old rusty garden lawn roller, one of those things you use to like flatten the tee down on a golf course. It was a big old rusty thing with metalwork and a withered wooden handle. And there were various flower beds going all the way around the back and the edges. There wasn't a stone bench, but there was a stone slab in the aforementioned kind of slope, which was somewhere a big pot was sat. Distinct lack of choice of pots as well in this. But yeah, massive conifer tree. It was probably double the height of this. And I remember the bottom of it was all brown and dead, and it was just a pile of dead conifer needles underneath. And this would have been a magnolia tree that had a lot of lower level branches coming out almost horizontally. And when it was in full bloom, they drooped, and it was a great little kind of hidey area and a great tree for climbing when I was a small kid. Honestly, walking around this virtual garden, it just keeps hitting me how close I've come to recreating a place I grew up in that looked a lot better than that. But this side of it, honestly, that is a view from my childhood. If you've never done anything like that, I mean, if there's a home or a place you've ever lived, give it a go. Try and recreate it. It's an incredibly relaxing, if only frustrating in the build, but satisfying exercise in Fallout building. I hope you haven't been too bored at my little tour down memory lane. But yeah, go play with those building mods, because it's amazing what you can do now.